Hello and welcome everyone to the IWWG bi-monthly open mic. I'm Kelly Dumar. I'm on the board of the International Women's Writing Guild and I produce the bi-monthly open mic, and I am thrilled, excited, and we've got such a lineup here of voices from all of you who signed up for the open mic. But to feature Krysten Hill reading her poems first with some Q&A is going to be absolutely wonderful. I'm going to interrupt myself for just 1 second. By the way, it's Sunday, July 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Just to give a little timestamp of what we're doing here. Leslie, do me a favor, if you would. Would you bring the rest of the attendees that have not yet had a panelist invite in? We've got about 9 people waiting to come in. You all set with that? You know how to do that, right? Oh, okay, no worries. Judy, you know how to do that? Actually, probably what happens is I have to, Judy, I'm gonna make you a co-host. Make co-host. Okay, good. Now you should be able to do that. Do you know how to do that? You just go to the attendees, the blue attendees under participants. You see the participants icon, press on that. And on the left, it says panelists, and on the right, it says attendees. Press on attendees, and then you will see by their name, on the far right, it says more. Just write promote to panelist. And just everybody who's in the attendees will then get invited to come into the video. And if you can't figure it out, no worries, I'll get to it in just a minute. Before I introduce Krysten, I want to let you know that we have this wonderful tradition of 3-minute readings in our open mic, and we're a hard stop at 3 minutes. You really can't go over. We do encourage you to practice, and I think more and more people are doing that, to really actually time yourself before you come. You're always welcome to read in any genre you choose. It could be poetry, it could be prose, it could be memoir, it could be your journal. It could be the draft of anything you've written today. It could be a short play or a monologue, whatever you want. You can do it in your 3 minutes. It could be journalism. And I just want to remind you about that. We do have a wait list of 11 tonight. So I'm not sure if we'll get everybody on who's on the wait list in tonight, but we will do our best because we very often do have many who signed up can't make it at the last minute. So don't be concerned. And when we start the open mic, in fact, what I think I might do right now is, thanks for doing that, Judy. Looks like you did a great job. What we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read the list of the 20 readers that I have right now. And by the way, if your name isn't your correct name, can you please rename yourself so that I'll know who you are? For the open mic, it's a lot easier for me to find you. And you do that by pressing on you look at your photo of yourself, your face, and it says your mute button or whatever. And there's a 3 ellipses. Press on that, and that will show you that you can rename yourself. So if you put your first name, last name in there, that would be really helpful, just in case you don't already have that. I am going to read the list before I introduce Krysten, just so that you can be getting ready. And we haven't gone to Facebook Live yet. To let you know that we have Ricky Aiello going first, Heather Archibald, Evelyn Asher, Lori Bauer, Juliette Bruce, Grace Calder, Tiffany Cheney, Janatul Chowdhury, Katerina Konin, Christina Dunbar, Diana Eden, Karen Edwards, Linda Flickinger, Pavlina Gatakova, Regina Jackson, Roberta Kurloff, Karen McDermott, Leslie Neustadt, Catherine O'Neill, and Favor O'Connor. Don't worry, you do not have to remember this order by any means at all. It's just to give you a sense of who are the 20 that we do have listed, and then I'll go over the wait list a little bit later, because we definitely want to try to get those of you who are on the wait list to read. And if anybody, look around at each other and see if you notice any names of anybody signed up to read that they're not here, or they are here. That'll be helpful for me when I start calling on you a little bit later. Okay, now we're going to try this trick of going to Facebook Live from our International Women's Writing Guild Facebook page. And I'm doing this for the first time, so let's see. I think it's set up to go. Okay. Check that your stream is connected and all required information is provided. Give me 2 seconds, everybody. If this works out easily, I'm going to do it. And if not, it's post setting. Choose where you want to post your broadcast. Okay, I did all that, but it's still not letting me go live. I may not be able to pull this off just because I don't really have time to, maybe it doesn't want me to do that. Select go live, stream key, connect. Okay, looks like it's not letting me, so I don't want to waste our time tonight figuring it out. Very patient, everyone. Talk to each other in the chat room while I'm fussing. Giving it one last try. Say where you're from. Say if you're a member of the International Women's Writing Guild. Say if you'd like to be. We'd love to have you as a member. Judy and Leslie can tell you how to join. I think it's setting up, Krysten. Hello.
It says it's live on Facebook in the corner.
Hello, everybody. Wonderful. I think we're doing it, Krysten. So I'm Kelly Dumar from the International Women's Writing Guild. I'm so excited to be with you here tonight and to introduce poet Krysten Hill, who is our featured writer tonight prior to our open mic. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Krysten. She is the author of, sorry, got to do one more thing. There we go. Krysten Hill, author of How Her Spirit Got Out, published by aforementioned Productions in 2016, which received the 2017 Jean Pedrick Chaput Prize. Her work has been featured in the Academy of American Poets, APT, BODY, Boiler Magazine, Up the Staircase Quarterly, Muzzle, Hank, Tinderbox, Poetry Journal, Winter Tangerine Review, and elsewhere. The recipient of the 2016 St. Botolph Club Foundation Emerging Artist Award and 2020 Mass Cultural Council Poetry Fellowship, she received her MFA in poetry from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, where she currently teaches. Welcome, Krysten. So wonderful to have you here with us tonight. I'm going to ask you to unmute because I'm going to let you say hello to everyone. Do I need, there you go, good. And
hey.
How are you?
How are y'all? It's good to see everybody. And those I cannot see, I know we are here together in spirit. Can y'all hear me okay? I have this weird mic attached to my face. I use it for teaching, but I'm also like, I'm always like a little bit worried about if people can hear me correctly. Is y'all can, yes, good.
You're good, you're good. You're great.
Awesome.
And Krysten is going to read for her poems for about 8 minutes, and then we're going to have some Q&A. Please feel free. We keep the chat room open for those of you who are new to us. We don't consider it a distraction. We actually consider it a connection. It's another way that we can all connect with each other. And if a line of Krysten's poem really resonates for you, then feel free to say that, and then do that in the open mic as well. So Krysten's going to read I'm going to have some questions for her, but then I'm also going to check the chat room. If you really want to ask Krysten a question, something you want to know, I'm definitely going to try to get to those. Wait until she's almost done though, so that I have an easy way to find them. And yeah, feel free to chat with each other. Krysten, I'm going to put you on a spotlight video. So you're claiming the stage here.
Awesome.
And thanks for coming tonight.
I'm happy to be here. This is wonderful.
Welcome. You start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So I'm going to start. I always like to pick a first poem that I feel like introduces my work a little bit and gets people familiar with what I do. And this is just one of my favorite poems to read to people. So. This mouth. Never your bird, never finch, never graceful feathered thing. Maybe litany, molting what it can't heal. Maybe pinwheel started with breath, whispering I love you, or today I will try. Maybe knife to core the apple of my eye, a blade that wants you blind. Maybe red kitchen where the kettle is hoarse from the heat underneath, where I boil my tongue to be rid of its stutter. Maybe humming while it sweeps the bodies of dead wasps from its windowsill, but never your bird sitting pretty and ornamental. Maybe a well-lit room that hurts your eyes before it swallows you, or an opening of skirt holding on to the hips of a woman that wears it well, or a cavity in the yard where I want to lay the language of better love, but never your canary, your parakeet, your sweet feather thing that lives just to sing for you. So that was a poem from the chat book, and I'll hold it up again. So this is my little copy that I have at the house. I also have a reading copy that I use. I think it's good for y'all to see. And what I do when I'm reading is I'll put some of the notes that'll help me kind of read better. I kind of like, I put it on the actual poem to just kind of show where I need to breathe and what I need to do. So that's just a little glimpse inside the process. So this is another poem from the chat book. And I'm just gonna read the first 3 sections from the poem from the chat book called Women Who Go Missing. And yeah. Women who go missing. 1. I've watched women leave with nothing but love in their full-roomed eyes. Walk right off their porches, dragging their night dresses into a night that knew how to mimic the dead they loved more than themselves. I've seen them abandon their gardens, not because they failed to coax the hearts of plants from the ground like magic, or because they didn't know what they neglected would overgrow and strangle, but because they knew if they didn't leave, they'd kill what they couldn't afford to nurture. 2. Nothing plants you deep enough. The soil you've grown in is too much mama's smothering face. You gasp in the mulch of her strewn guts. Some days it's easier to stare into the violent swinging dark and take it. You want to stop writing for what disappears. Open windows that look like outlines of Black women who go missing. You understand Hurston's shaky shelf of fragile things and also what falls from it. You wish for Lord's throwing knife to hide in your hair. This world is full of weapons. It's hard to take care of what comes to flowers, scatters after a mad wind. Even your mean great-grandmother who lived to be difficult never knew the trees she made from the seeds of her body were better than any strangled sonnet, clenched harder than any hard hand against her. You come from a braided clan of women who held their tongues with their teeth. You tasted their blood in your sleep. Women who planted their visions on the tongues of their daughters. 3. On Askew Street, didn't she have a garden in the middle of concrete teeth and sirens? Didn't her husband sigh when she put on her boots and short shorts and with her ass towards the street, give those marigolds a drink from her hose, fix the slouch of tulips? Even Miss Eddie tried to outgrow the hips of her roses, but didn't know how to make her soil the right kind of dress. Didn't the neighbors say, how country, and who this heifer thinks she be? Didn't she go on about her business, smile at their husbands, call them ladies by their first names? Weren't they always a temperament of color she could curl her heart around, softening what made living hard? Wasn't it the one thing she didn't need us for? Weren't we jealous? We kicked their heads apart, dyed them in motor oil, blamed stray cats. Even then, didn't she say, girls, I want color at my funeral? Didn't we keep our promise? Didn't your purple dress stun the morning out the day? You were always her iris standing against a dull brick house. Sister, I couldn't tell you then. Aren't we here remembering how even the bees were drunk? They wandered into the house like our displaced uncles. Hell, the flowers didn't even know how to stay put in the small plot. Snuck out at night into our own kitchen windows. Along those lines, and I should say that that poem, the last section of that poem was for my Aunt Nita, who passed away from cancer. And she had this beautiful garden in the inner city, because we can do that. We can have gardens in the inner city. And she had this little small plot of land, and she grew all kinds of things, and it was kind of this display for the neighborhood, and it was beautiful. This is kind of a newer poem, and this is called, I Thought I Had My Mama's Green Thumb, Then Winter Came. And the ficus I grew in the humidity of the tending light of my living room, it started to die. For a while, its branches brushed the ceilings, but in winter, it wept its leaves for weeks while I slept. I swept the shame every morning. It hurt to make a tree a metaphor. The parasites I suspected, my heart eaten out, the cures I poured over the infested mess. I knew what a finger of brown liquor could do to me. I tried to kill the problem and killed the tree. My mama knew how to save almost anything. She could put her green finger on the pulse of a sick fern and deliver a cutting safely to a jelly jar, but we grew apart, stubborn shoots from a primeval stump. How do I apologize to what I don't have the energy to save? Mama, your hands smelled like clay when you cut my chin and told me to be careful with what I seeded my grief with. Mama, I write, I'm doing my best. How y'all doing? I'm gonna end with one more poem. So this one was recently, yes, that one was called, I Thought I Had My Mama's Green Thumb, Then Winter Came. This new one that I'm gonna read is called Nothing, and it was published in the Academy of American Poets recently for their Poem of Day series. So shout out to January O'Neill for making this poem possible on Academy of American Poets, and always being so supportive of my work. This poem is a little hard for me to read because there's a lot in it. So I'm gonna try my best to get through it, especially this week. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's been going on, and I live this every day. This poem, I'm just gonna read it. Nothing. I ask a student how I can help her. Nothing is on her paper. It's been that way for 35 minutes. She has a headache. She asked to leave early. Maybe I asked the wrong question. I've always been dumb with questions. When I hurt, I too have a hard time accepting advice or gentleness. I owe for an education that hurt, and collectors call my mama's house. I do nothing about my unpaid bills as if that will help. I do nothing about the mold on my ceiling and it spreads. I do nothing about the cat's litter box and she pisses on my new bath mat. Nothing isn't an absence. Silence isn't nothing. I told a woman I loved her and she never talked to me again. I told my mama a man hurt me and her hard silence told me to keep my story to myself. Nothing is full of something, a mask that grows where you cut at it. I've lost 3 aunts when white doctors told them the thing they felt was nothing. My aunt said nothing when it clawed at her breathing. I sat in a room while it killed her. I'm afraid when nothing keeps me in bed for days. I imagine what my beautiful aunts are becoming underground, and I cry for them in my sleep where no one can see. Nothing is in my bedroom, but I smell my aunt's perfume and wake to my name called from nowhere. I never looked to a sky and said it was empty. Maybe that's why I imagine a God up there to feel what seems unimaginable. Some days I want to live inside the words more than my own black body. When the white man shoves me so that he can get on the bus first. When he says I am nothing but fits it inside a word and no one stops him, I wear a bruise in the morning where he touched me before I was born. My mama's shame spreads inside me. I've heard her say there was nothing in a grocery store she could afford. I've heard her tell the landlord she had nothing to her name. There was nothing I could do for the young black woman that disappeared on her way to campus. They found her purse and her phone, but nothing led them to her. Nobody was there to hold Renisha McBride's hand when she was scared of dying. I worry poems are nothing against it. My mama said if I became a poet or a teacher, I'd make nothing. But I've thrown words like rocks and hit something in a room when I aim for a window. One student says when he writes, it feels like nothing can stop him, and his laughter unlocks a door. He invites me into his living. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Wow. Krysten, I'm going to just take a minute. There's been so many comments. You'll get a chance to read in the chat room. No, you don't have to read them now, but I'm going to ask, does anyone have a burning question? A burning question for Krysten, and I will try to get to those. Thank you. That was a really gorgeous, really disturbing and fabulous reading, and so so much. But I have to say that this is such a fascinating book blurb that Jill McDonough wrote for you. Can I quote it? These poems are a middle finger tucked in the hip pocket of your favorite dress. Jill McDonough, I know, is one of your colleagues on the faculty. Maybe you also wrote with her as a graduate student. These poems are a middle finger tucked in the hip pocket of your favorite dress. What can you tell us about this chapbook process for you? It seems like it's a couple of years behind you, but I wonder how you got in touch with APT to publish you. And I know they're a Boston area publisher, poetry publisher, and perhaps they found you or you found them. And I just wondered if you wanted to say anything, even though it's like not as current. I'm sure you're very close to getting your next book done, if it's not done already, but what was it like putting this chapbook together?
this poem actually started as, or this chapbook actually started with one poem. And I knew Carissa Austin, who is the publisher of aforementioned, or she's on APT, which is the literary magazine that they run, but also she runs the publishing house, Aforementioned Productions. But Carissa approached me about a poem that she saw that I was writing. What was that poem called? What did it start with? I can't even remember what the original poem was called, but we quickly found out that this one poem that she was thinking of publishing in a chapbook was going to be a larger project. So she was generous enough to let me send her poems throughout the duration of us working together. And we actually crafted the chapbook together. I actually started with a poem about the yellow wallpaper. I'm just remembering it. So that poem actually didn't even make the chapbook. So that says something about just the process. I was lucky enough to work with an independent press that was willing to just work with me and kind of see what happened. And we made the executive decision to cut that poem, but then other poems came from that and kind of scaffolded around this idea of how her spirit got out. So I'm lucky to work with independent presses forever. I don't know, but also she's just really generous. She's just a generous editor. She was willing to go back and forth with me with edits on these poems that she had never seen before. I was really lucky. So
Very,
love.
yeah, wonderful relationship to really have that kind of collaborative editor and publisher, and that intimate experience of that co-creation. It sounds like just a wonderful opportunity, but I'm not sure that our listeners tonight are aware that you're from Kansas City.
Yes.
A little bit through your accent, which is fabulous. And I'm curious about, and there are a couple of questions I want to get to, but I'm curious about it. I kind of have the feeling that many, or if not all, or most of these most recent poems were written in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious about place, habitat for you, and where these poems, could they have been written if you'd stayed in Kansas City? Did you need to leave Kansas City to write these? Is there something about being in Boston that has influenced the craft or the experience of these poems?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I think a lot. I rely a lot on my memory of Kansas City and what it was to grow up in the inner city. I grew up in the heart of the city, Prospect Street, represent. It was the street that nobody would let you get a cab to. I've had cab drivers say, I don't take you there. But for me, it was like just my heart. And it was like the best place to grow up. And I think about Kansas City fondly, but I think what happened when I came to Boston, I needed a change. I needed to work on craft, and I needed to get some distance between the place that I had grown up, to have some perspective and to see if I could do what I do in Missouri somewhere else. That was my test to myself. And so I just picked a spot on the map, and I said, I'm going to apply to a grad school there. And I said, I've never seen the ocean. And that's actually how I came to Boston. I said, I've never seen the ocean. I'm going to apply to grad schools along the coast. And luckily enough, UMass was like, yeah, sure, come on board, and we'll see what happens. And I'm really grateful for that. So what I have found in Boston is a community that I did not expect in terms of just finding my fellow weirdos. Shout out to my fellow weirdos, in a way that I never thought I would. And Boston has kind of provided me with that kind of sense of diverse artistic community that I was kind of wanting. And not just through poetry, like burlesque, music, theater. So I don't just hang with poets. I find inspiration in all the communities that Boston has to offer. So that's kind of
clearly a flair for the dramatic. Your reading is exceptional. That is, we know poets, we're not always the best readers of our own work, but clearly that's a a unique talent that you have. So was it always poetry for you? Did you always know, okay, so that's the genre I'm going to write in? And so, or did you take a trip to fiction or a stop in drama? But is it mainly poetry for you?
I've always loved reading plays. So my heart started in theater. I was never brave enough to do theater full time. I took a few theater classes and wanted to like do playwriting when I first came into creative writing. But then I saw that I was just kind of, it sounds weird, but I was kind of shy when it came to playwriting and performing on the stage. And I was just like, well, maybe like verse will help me with that kind of that feeling. And so I started with playwriting. I still love reading plays. Reading plays or performance texts in general. I love doing that. And so that was just my first heart. I actually read more short stories than I do poetry, if that makes any sense when I'm processing.
Read more short stories than poetry, but you write more poetry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And there are a few questions here. Jane Pearl, this is more of a comment. I love that you perform your poems. You don't just read them. And from Sheila, I'm a UMB grad who interned with the Marble Collection, and I saw you perform a few of your poems at the launch party. And she's very happy about that. I know there were questions. Oh, what are you working on now? Lisa St. John asks, what are you working on now?
I'm working on a lot of research right now. I'm researching a lot about trauma, and especially generational trauma and what that means. So right now I'm not writing any poems. I'm just kind of thinking about research and what that looks like for this book and just letting it I had to scrap a lot of poems in this manuscript that I thought I was going to publish. I was like, nah, it's good. I bet some people will be upset to hear that, but I scrapped a lot of poems, and I'm kind of starting back to research to see what happens when I'm kind of researching around generational trauma.
So the poems are just not, the ones you scrapped, they're just not the ones you want to really bring out right now. And so you're doing this research on trauma. Do you have an open question as you're approaching this research that maybe, I'm not sure yet what form? I mean, maybe there'll be poems, maybe the research on trauma is going to lead me into a different genre possibly, or do you know they're going to be poems?
I'm just going to see what happens with that research, because what I want to come from that research is hope. This idea that you can go through something really terrible, or you can deal with really, really giant obstacles in terms of trauma, but still become and do the things that you want to do and have a vision for yourself. So I don't want the book to be sad. I want it to be honest. So if it's sad, it's sad. But I also want to speak from a place of hope. So what I'm hoping is from this research, there will come kind of answers to a lot of questions that I have about identity and kind of other things around trauma.
Is it childhood trauma? Is it traumatic violence? Or, I mean, is there a way that it's an aspect of trauma that you're focusing on?
I think it's just a check the giant box. I'm gonna start there. I feel like I'm thinking about a lot of what Black women face today. I'm thinking a lot about what's happening in my own family. What are the silences we keep? And how do we correct some of those silences? How do we become better, and kind of think about that while also giving like a voice to the women who have been resilient and did what they had to do, in light of maybe not having the answers for what that feels like. So hopefully that's something.
Ricky asks or says, I'm struck by your language. Obviously your inspiration comes from your life. How does writing poetry heal your pain and celebrate your victories?
I think I've come from a lot of, let me start with I think in terms of literary history, Audre Lorde has been instrumental in helping me think about how to deal with kind of speaking the truth even when you're really scared of speaking. And so she kind of gives me kind of that, she continually gives me that kind of, that sense of like strength and bravery to kind of risk those truths even when you know that it might not always be welcomed in a room that you're performing in. And so I've been thinking a lot about that lately, just to speak the truth, even when you know that truth might not always be welcomed, and what that looks like.
That's really, really, really powerful. You can really feel there's your images and your voice they just come through so strongly. And there have been so many comments of the listeners who've been listening tonight that just have captured your phrases and your lines and are just been really tremendously moving, emotionally packed. Nuances. Katerina notes that you've grown up with 3 gardeners, or grown up with gardeners. 3. Yes. Even and I love how you mentioned, and in the inner city. Do you have a garden now?
Do. So I don't have a plot of land, but I have 2 porches. I have a sun porch is pretty it has windows, and then I have a back porch that's pretty open. And so I've been doing a lot of like porch gardening, and kind of growing everything out there, and then bringing all those plants in for the winter. There's a few plants behind me that I'm trying to showcase. But yeah, right now I'm growing tomatoes. So if you are living in Rosendale, Mass right now and need some tomato plants, I got so many from my last plant. And so I'm willing to share those with you.
I might have to make a trip into Rosendale just to get some and taste your tomatoes. That's fabulous. Well, thank you. I think this is, you've given us so much that I think we can now move into our open mic. And I just really want to thank you so much for sharing this evening with us and all the writers here. I know everybody in the chat room has just been raving about the impact of the beauty of and the emotion of your reading tonight. And so thank you. And thanks for reading Nothing. It was really quite a unique experience to get to hear you. We all came across it, and so many of our writers said, oh my gosh, that's Krysten Hill. She's coming to talk to us, but her poem is featured on Poets.org. And we said, yes. So that was wonderful, delightful. So I'm going to actually stop what I hope has been a successful Facebook live stream. And thanks to Facebook for letting us be in there tonight. And I'm going to also cancel the spotlight video. Oh, wait, one other thing. Before we move on, Krysten, I just want to make sure. So let's get your work ready, everybody.
Yes.
And I'm going to put, okay, what happened is, okay, just grabbing the place. Everybody's going to want to know, where can they buy your book? So I want to get that put into our chat room, which I'm doing right now. This is the link. Where you can, at aforementioned productions, where you can buy the book, and then you can also go to learn more about Krysten at her website. Which is also in the chat room, and we hope that you will. And now I'm gonna have Ricky get ready, Heather get ready, and Evelyn Asher get ready. And by get ready, I mean have what you wanna read ready, and also just be prepared one by one to unmute yourselves, if you will. And I'm gonna give whoever is our next reader the spotlight video. And please also keep talking in the chat room to the readers and letting them know how you appreciate what they're reading. So Ricky, are you here? Will you unmute yourself and say hello?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
You are. Now we see you. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
and just gonna stop the recording.